I'm Richard Edelman, and I'm here today to talk with you about the results of the Edelman Trust Barometer 2022. We've been doing this study for actually 22 years, since year 2000. We survey people in 28 countries. This is a look at the Hispanic community in the United States. Let me remind you that as of 2020, in the height of the pandemic, government was the most trusted institution, and also that Hispanic trusted institutions actually was lowest among the four groups that we surveyed, were white, Asian, African American, and Hispanic. So here we are today. In fact, Hispanics are the most trusting of institutions in the U.S., substantially higher than the overall population and across every one of the four institutions. Among Hispanics, you see that business is the most trusted, followed by NGOs, then media, with government at the bottom. Again, this parallels the general population in terms of the rank order, but again, I want you to see there's almost a 10-point delta between attitudes towards business in Hispanic community and general population. Next slide. Of the four institutions, we find that only business is seen as a unifying force among Hispanics. All three of the others are seen as divisive. And that is especially true of government, almost by a 3-to-1 margin. Next slide. Again, continuing this story about business, trust is local. Trust is in my employer. Historically, trust is from the top down in institutions and in leaders. That is no longer the case. In fact, whether it's journalists, CEOs, or in the government leaders, we now see that trust has moved into my friends and family, my colleagues, and my CEO. And therefore, trust is in something you can control, which is in your relationship with your employer. Next. We also see that Latinx consumers are the most vociferous about the importance of belief-driven actions, about a company being values-oriented. So in consumer, on brands, again, Latinos are more interested in buying brands that advocate for their beliefs. Also in terms of where they work, 60% say that I use beliefs as a means of deciding whether I work there. And finally, nearly 60% invest on that basis. Next. In a stunning finding, and this is similar to the general population, the information that you get from my employer is the most trusted of any, ahead of mainstream media, the government, or advertising. Important to note, Latinos are more skeptical of information than the general population by about 7 points. Next. This is really important slide. CEOs are expected to be face of change. They are supposed to be visible. They're supposed to be activist. They're supposed to be speaking up on societal issues. In particular, not just visible, but also to be advocating. And again, Latinos are more persuaded about this, about considering a job. And so Latinos want you as a CEO to stand with the community. Next. But there's an important difference between policy and politics. Specifically, Latinos want CEOs to talk about the jobs and the economy, wage inequality, also about technology and automation. In particular, there's a big fear among Hispanics about job loss. 80+% are worried about being replaced by machines in the next decade. But not politics. Hispanics are very clear. Don't have CEOs tell us who the next leader of the country should be. Next. This is the money slide. We thought that this year, maybe business had reached the far extent of what people wanted in terms of issue advocacy. Not so. it is clear Latinos want more business engagement on societal issues, not less, by a 3-to-1 margin. And again, among Latinos, interestingly, the biggest point is access to health care. Among the general population, it is actually climate change and reskilling. But for Latinos, health care. Next. I want you to also see that it's business and government is, by the contrast, not seen as competent. So business gets things done, government fails. The gap for Latinos is less profound than the general population, but it's still massive. We're talking about a 27-point gap on competence. In the world, it's a 53-point gap between government and business. Business seen as able to be effective. Business has a problem with Hispanics about its vision, in particular about purpose. Also, a question a bit about fairness. But again, much better than government. We prefer business to step into the void left by incompetent and unable government on societal issues. Next. Our theory of restoring social stability is that we have to have a 4-legged table. At the moment, we have 2 short legs and 2 high legs. Business and NGOs are high, government and media are low. We're not getting quality information. We're not getting a sense of quality of life in a system that works. In fact, more than half the people in the Latino market believe that capitalism is not a force for good. So, what I want to say is business societal role is here to stay. Companies have to absorb this and internalize it and put it into their supply chains, put it into their hiring policies, make sure that business is leading, not lagging. Second, we have to see demonstrable progress. The gap between the mass population opinions and the elite populations has never been wider. It's nearly 20 points in the US. This is, again, similar to other countries in the world. We have to show that the system works for all. Latinos can help show that story. Third, we have to have leadership focus on long-term, not short-term. The problem with both media and government at the moment is between divisiveness and disinformation, chasing clicks, chasing votes. Business has to be the societal stability enhancer. Long-term thinking, whether it's on getting access to healthcare or sustainability. Lastly, every institution has to give quality and trustworthy information to stakeholders because we are at a moment of disbelief. We don't have a confidence in a shared set of facts. And Latinos in particular rely on social media as a primary information source, despite their own reservations on the quality of the information. Therefore, it is down to business. You'll recall, business, its own newsletters, is the most relevant and quality source of information, whether it's on the pandemic, vaccination, return to workplace, anything. So, I fundamentally believe in the opportunity to regain trust in our society, but it's going to take business to lead in the next 12 months.